Like a lot of folks, I had a giant VPS. Over the years, it had migrated across multiple hosts and multiple control setups, Cpanel, then Plesk. So much cruft accumulated that the box was crippled and the expense was ridiculous. And paying for managed hosting was never more than a band-aid. But here's what's changed. With the advent of AI, it's now genuinely possible to self-host, to run your own web server. So this is a capstone review of a migration we just completed, end to end, taking a large domain portfolio off a single self-hosted control panel server and onto edge compute. About 200 domains, 60 active virtual hosts, 80 mailboxes, all sharing one machine, which means all sharing one blast radius. What I want to give you isn't the runbook, it's the decision framework and the handful of expensive lessons that only show up at this scale. Here's the shape of the estate. The number that matters isn't 200 domains, it's the word one. One kernel, one PHP stack, one mail server, one IP reputation. Self-hosting at this density is economically rational and operationally seductive, and the bill it hands you is shared fate. The least important site on that box is a foothold into everything else on it. Part 1 is the method, the single technical primitive that made this migration safe to attempt, and the decision framework we ran every one of 200 domains through. This is the single idea that made the whole migration safe. A worker route bound to a domain executes before the origin server is ever contacted, so the moment you deploy the route, that site is off the old box with no DNS change at all. And because you touched no DNS change at all, and because you touched no DNS, the mail records are untouched, which makes this the safest possible migration for any domain carrying live email. Repointing DNS afterward is housekeeping, not the migration. One caveat, the host name has to be proxied through the CDN, or your worker simply never runs. We stopped treating migrate the sites as one task. Every domain gets a disposition, decided in this order, revive, build new, mask, redirect, park, or let die. The single biggest efficiency gain was refusing to default to the top of the ladder. Of 9 domains that were confidently asserted as revivable, only 3 actually were. The rest were parked pages, bare directory listings, or in one memorable case, a database holding 3,800 posts, a pure pharmaceutical spam. Part 2 is the expensive part. 4 lessons that cost us real time, and that I think would cost anyone the same, because each one is an assumption that feels obviously safe until you test it. Lesson 1, and it cost us the most time. Verify what is actually serving, not what the DNS record says. Reading-only DNS produced a completely phantom backlog. Roughly half the domains apparently pointing at the old box were already being served by edge workers, with a stale record left behind. Second, confirm a domain even exists before inventing an explanation for it. 4 we'd written off as being on an inaccessible account had no name servers whatsoever. And third, on the server never means has content. Check the archive and the database, both. Lesson 2 is the one nobody expects. When you get compromised, the archive crawlers don't stop. They keep visiting, and they faithfully preserve the hacked version of your sites. So the most recent snapshots, the ones an automated recovery will naturally grab, are the defacement. Your backup of last resort silently became worthless. The fix is to know your incident day to the week and pin every recovery to a cutoff just before it, and then classify what came back automatically. Mail is where teardowns get stuck. The inventory said 80 mailboxes across 40 domains, an enormous blocker. But when we actually resolved each domain's mail records, only 2 still routed anything to the box. We nearly scoped weeks of work against a number that was about 95% fiction. 2 rules fall out. Resolve the mail target, don't pattern match its name, and read the delivery log, not the mailbox table. The one genuinely live domain had a dormant mailbox and a live forwarder carrying real mail every day. Trusting the table would have quietly destroyed someone's working email. If you take one operational thing from this deck, take the ordering. Add the destination address first. It's unverified. A human has to click a link, and critically, that step changes nothing, so it's safe. Then you discover you can't enable hosted routing while foreign mail records exist, and you can't create routing rules pointing at an unverified destination, so the sequence is forced. And you leave the old mail records in place, right up to the cutover moment, which means mail flows the entire time, and there's no gap at all. A quick tour of the things that ate hours. Config caching will lie to you. A long-running worker that memoizes its configuration keeps serving stale behavior after you've updated the store. The fix is to redeploy. Root conflicts turned out to be a safety feature. Our tooling refused to seize roots owned by another worker, which is the only reason we didn't silently clobber a dozen working redirects. Rate limits fail silently. Parallel archive calls returned empty rather than erroring, which reads as no content exists and quietly poisons your decisions. And credential scope is never uniform. Most permission errors were simply the wrong token. Part free, what we actually did with the portfolio once it was free of the box, because getting off the server is only half the value. Dead and parked domains still carry link value, and the temptation is to interlink them randomly or stuff keywords, which reads as a footprint and creates liability rather than authority. Instead, we embedded about 20,000 articles from across the network and matched each parked domain to genuinely adjacent coverage by meaning. So drain services page ends up linking to real local water infrastructure reporting. Same mechanic, completely different outcome. This one surprised me in how much it mattered. Rather than running every property off one template, we maintained genuinely distinct design languages per disposition, a light directory look for parked domains, a serif legal treatment ready to hand to a buying firm, a minimal dark holding page for the parent brand, a warm editorial layout for revived publications, and purpose-built designs where we authored original content. To chaos. A large portfolio becomes legible at a glance, and you avoid the uniform footprint that one template stamps across hundreds of properties. Never declare a teardown safe on inventory alone. The gate is 4 checks. Every virtual host cross-referenced for its worker route and true origin. Every mail record actually resolved, not pattern matched. Box-side evidence. 0 web traffic genuinely served by the machine, and 0 mail deliveries in 48 hours. And every so-called unknown domain confirmed to actually exist before you treat it as a blocker. This check earned its keep on the last pass. It surfaced 3 sites still genuinely served by the box that our traffic-based inventory had missed completely. Where it landed, web fully migrated. Every property off the origin, mail, the one live routing domain cut over cleanly, and the rest are dormant by explicit decision rather than by accident. Costs, the long tail of archived, parked, and redirect-only properties now runs at effectively 0 marginal cost, with no server to patch, and the risk that started this whole thing, the shared blast radius, is gone. The punchline is that only the genuinely active applications ever needed a real host in the first place. I'll leave you with the through line. The real cost of self-hosting a portfolio isn't the server, it's the drift. Over years, the estate silently diverges from your mental model. Virtual hosts for domains that lapsed, mailboxes for people long gone, DNS records pointing at services that no longer exist. Nobody ever decommissions anything, and a bill comes due all at once, either as a compromise with a shared blast radius or as a migration where you genuinely cannot tell what's alive anymore. So if you self-host, and there are good reasons to, do it with per domain dispositions, off-box content snapshots, hosted mail, and usage instrumentation from day one. Nearly every expensive mistake we made was an assumption we simply hadn't tested.